Plus Tour Week 4, 54, 27, and 5, 67% winners over the last 2 years. I've got 8 selections for you today. Last week, 3 and 4, a disappointing week. Drops the record all the way down to 67% over 2 years. Of course, we lost Ben Roethlisberger, the starting quarterback of Pittsburgh, so the NFL play lost. And then I wanted to show you one stat here in the Toledo-Murray State game. We gave out Murray State plus 40. Look at this score. Now, we have half times on Phil Steele Plus. Murray State actually had a 238 to 237 yard edge at the half. Somehow lost this game 45-0. Stopped on downs twice, missed a field goal, intercepted at the 17, had a field goal blocked. Toledo got a touchdown on the next play. All that went wrong in that game, or it would have been a nice, easy winning week for us last week for the Phil Steele Plus. But we'll get back on track this week with a nice big winning week. 8 selections for you. Also want to remind you, we put out a YouTube video every Wednesday as well. I've got my college angles and more. Pretty interesting stuff on there. Went over a lot of different things that you should know for the upcoming week. So make sure you check that one out as well. And as of course, here on YouTube, you want to keep these things free. You want to keep the selections free all season long. Just hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell. We'll let you know when the next one's up and available. Should be every Wednesday and Friday. Leave me some comments below. Let me know what you want to see on that Wednesday video. And, of course, like the video. All right, let's start with my Inside the Press Box yardage game of the week. Now, using here Phil Steele Plus, you just go to the team pages. Once you're a Phil Steele Plus member, you come in here, and I like to line the teams up side by side, just like this on every game. I always put the home team on the right and the visitor on the left. So let's go ahead and put this Tulsa, Wyoming game. And here we have a game. I was doing a show in San Francisco with Tom Tolbert on WKNBR, and he was wondering why Tulsa's only a 3.5-point favorite. And I said, Tom, it's obvious. Take a look at this. Wyoming's 3-0, and Tulsa's 1-2. But Tom's very adept, very astute at looking at things, and Tulsa is the better team. In fact, this is my Inside the Press Box yardage game of the week. Let's take a look at the Inside the Press Box right up this week. Over here, we've got the projected yards. It shows Tulsa with a 391 to 262 yard edge, winning the game 23-16. They're only a 3.5-point favorite in this one. In the Inside Press Box, you get a complete write-up on every game right here. You get my computer's forecast on every game. I'll show you the complete sheet from Inside the Press Box so you can see everything you get. Rankings, stats, numbers, everything on every game. Every game is lined up like this, not just highlighted one or two, but every game gets this complete write-up. And right now, if you go to Inside the Press Box, the code word is Steele19, and let me bring this down here to show you what you get. When you type in code Steele19 at Inside the Press Box, you get $20 off any subscription to Inside the Press Box, or 50% off this week's single issue. Inside the Press Box College and Pro right now is $239, so take $20 off that. If you want just college, it's $139, brings it all the way down to just $119. And the same thing with the Pro. $139 brings it down to $119, or 50% off a single issue, which normally is $20. It would bring it down to just $10. So there's the code word Steele19. That's STEELE 19. Get you that discount on that. And Inside the Press Box is right here, and you just go to subscribe now. Here is your packages right there. Or you can even go to on philsteele.com. Just go to the store there, and you can get Inside the Press Box right there, and just type in that code word that I listed at Steele19. But let's take a little closer look at this game and show why the computer has Tulsa favored, even though they're 1-2, and Wyoming is 3-0 this year. Wyoming's been outgained in every game. Outgained by 148 yards by Missouri, 151 yards by Texas State, 444 to 293, and that's not a very good Texas State team. And even last week, they played Idaho, an FCS team. Outgained again, 303 to 287. Sean Chambers, their quarterback, hitting just 39.1% on the season. Hasn't thrown a touchdown pass, got an 0-1 ratio. And you look at Tulsa, on the other hand, they gave Michigan State a good game. While they only had 80 yards, Michigan State's got a great defense. They have actually held their opponents to a season low in all 3 games this year. They clubbed San Jose State on the road, gave Oklahoma State. That's a tough loss for Tulsa last week against Oklahoma State. Look at this. They led that thing 21-20 at the half. Oklahoma State at the end of the game was running out the clock. They weren't covering. Chuba Hubbard gets a 33-yard touchdown run. I believe it was fourth down, and that touchdown run gave Oklahoma State the cover. Tulsa actually had a 22-21 first down edge. So while Tulsa's 1-2, they've lost to two very good teams and played at both of them tough. While Wyoming's 3-0, they've been rather fortunate, outgained in every game. They're minus 105 yards per game on the season so far, playing to an average game grade of 73.6. Tulsa's playing to an average game grade of 85.2. The average game grade says Tulsa by 11.3. You're inside the press box. Yardage, game of the week, is to take Tulsa minus 3.5 over Wyoming, and it says they will have a 395 to 265 yard edge. Make sure you check out the yardage after the game is over and see how close inside the press box came. Now let's go to my streak of the week. And this week's streak of the week, we're going to go to the Big Ten. And it's Nebraska and Illinois. And we're going to focus in on Nebraska for this one. And Nebraska lost to Colorado, a game they probably should have won. They had a 17-0 lead at the half, a 266, 84-yard edge. Somehow blew the game late. Colorado overcame a 10-point fourth-quarter deficit. But that's not the streak we're talking about. The streak we're talking about, if you click on last 40-year results here, is that Nebraska has now covered seven straight Big Ten games. 1, 2, 3, 4. This was Bethune-Cookman. That doesn't count. 5, 6, 7. 7 in a row in the Big Ten. Now, they haven't played a Big Ten game yet this year. They've only played South Alabama, Colorado, and Northern Illinois. So that streak is current. 7 in a row covers against the Big Ten. And if you're wondering about Illinois and how they do as a home underdog, because they are the dreaded home underdog this week, let's focus in. This is out of the workbook page. The workbook gives you all these ATS angles for each team, and it goes back since 2009. And you can see right here in the stats, see the stats as a home dog: 1-3, 2-3, 1-4, 1-2. So the last 4 years, Illinois is just 5-12 as a home dog. Nebraska 22-9 ATS away. So there's a lot of good factors here, but the main one we're going to hone in on is that Nebraska has covered 7 straight Big Ten games on the road. We're going to take Nebraska, lay the points on the road against Illinois this week as your streak of the week. I do have 2 situational plays for you. And I remember a couple weeks ago, normally a situational play is when a team is in a sandwich game, right? Well, the other type of situation is when the Power 5 team is not in a sandwich and the other team is in a somewhat of a sandwich game. A couple weeks ago, we used Oregon minus 24 over Nevada. Let's see how that one turned out. Oregon minus 24 over Nevada. Oh, they won the game 77-6 with a 623, 192-yard edge. Now, the game that resembles that this week, we're going to take a look at Central Michigan against Miami of Ohio. When you look at Central Michigan, now last week they were without Quentin Dormady, the quarterback. David Moore came in, did a good job, led them to the win over Akron. They won that thing 45-24. Now, Central is a team that hopes to compete in the MAC this year. Jim McElwain thinks they can compete in the MAC this year. They're already 1-0 in the MAC. They've got Western Michigan rival, Eastern Michigan rival on deck. They've got Miami this week. Completely meaningless game. What'd they do when they played Wisconsin on the road? They lost 61-0. They were outgained 599-58. Now let's take a look at Miami. Miami's a poor 1-2 this year. Not a very good team, right? Not so fast. I think Miami's going to be ranked at the end of the year. I still believe they win their division, even though they lost to North Carolina here. And look how Miami did. They actually outgained Florida on the road, could easily have won that game, led North Carolina late. In fact, North Carolina got this touchdown with 1:01 left in the game to pull out a 28-25 win over Miami. And then they buried Bethune-Cookman 63-0. Jaron Williams, their quarterback, is hitting 74% with a 6-0 ratio. And on Phil Steele Plus, another thing you could look at here is the let's go to, not the home page. Let's go to the FBS info not team pages. Sorry about that. FBS. Let's go back to the home page. I'm going to go to FBS info, and we're going to go to pass efficiency defense. Now, this takes into account the strength of opponent faced as well. Let's see how good Central Michigan's pass defense is. It's all the way down here at number 111. Look at this. They've allowed 8 touchdown passes, just 1 interception, 65% completions. So you factor that into the fact that you have got a pretty good passing team in Miami and a pretty good running team as well. Miami is a team at 1-2 that's trying to build confidence. And if you think Miami's in a sandwich situation potentially, they're only off Bethune-Cookman and they only have a bye on deck. Look at this. Next week is open. So Central Michigan's their most important game in a 3-week span. Central, meanwhile, is off of Akron, a big win. They're hoping to get 2 rivals on deck. They hope to do well in the MAC. Dormandy was out last week. I'm going to lay the 29.5 points here. I'm taking Miami of Florida minus 29.5, and hopefully this one works out like the Oregon one did against Nevada when they won 77-6. Now, the normal situational play is when a team is in a sandwich, and that's what we're going to look at here. We're going to go to Virginia against Old Dominion. As you know, I like to line up the visitor on the left. That's Old Dominion, and I like to line up the home team on the right. That's Virginia. Now, last week, Virginia played Florida State and beat them 31-24. But once again, you get the box score. You just click here. You can see how the game went. Virginia actually trailed 24-17 in the fourth quarter, got a touchdown with 6:02 left. Then they went ahead with 2:34 left in the game to pull out the 7-point win. Florida State was actually down at the Virginia 3-yard line at the end of the game. Now, that was a big, big game. Virginia fans charged the field. Now, guess who they have next week? They got a road game to Notre Dame. They're 3-0, Notre Dame on deck. These kids are right now thinking big, big thoughts at Virginia. Old Dominion, they're probably not even worried about them. Now, Old Dominion just played a pretty good game against Virginia Tech. In fact, Old Dominion has got a record of 8-2 against in-state opponents. They're fired up. Most of these kids are from Virginia. They wanted to be recruited by Virginia. They didn't get recruited by Virginia. And look at this Virginia Tech game a little bit closer. It was actually 24-17 in the fourth quarter. Virginia Tech got a touchdown with 11:56 left to win by 14. But that's only a 14-point win. Virginia's laying 30 points here. The two schools are only 163 miles apart. Old Dominion, by the way, had a bye last week, completely fresh, fired up. This is their A game. If there ever was a C game, coming off of fans charge the field, comeback win over Florida State with Notre Dame on deck for a 3-0 team, this is a C game for Virginia. So your situational play, take Old Dominion plus 30 over Virginia. All right, let's go to my rare ranking play. That worked out last week. Maryland played Temple. I pointed out that Maryland was a rare ranked team. They played a little tight and actually got beat by Temple last week. Well, this week's rare ranking play is California. And once again, the beautiful thing about these last 40 years results, this takes you all the way back to 1976. So you can actually go back here to 1976, and anything is at your fingertips. And the halftime stats are here since 2004. 2003. Totals are here since 2003 as well. I find these halftime things fascinating. But let's go back and see how Cal has done the last 8 times they've been a ranked team. Last year they got ranked. They opened up the season with 3 wins, got to 3-0, and then they played Oregon and lost 42-24. We're not ranked the year before. We're not ranked the year before. They were ranked here against UCLA, and they lost that game 40-24. The one time they've covered in the last 8 was this one right here. Ranked number 23, they were plus 7.5. They lost to Utah by 6, but they covered the spread by 1.5. Prior to that, the first time they were ranked was Washington State. They were a big favorite, minus 17, did not win. So right now we're at 1-4 or 1-3 against the spread. Let's go back and find the next time they were ranked, and we have to go back to 2009. Washington lost 42-10. Oregon State lost 31-14. That's now 5 losses. USC lost 30-3. Oregon lost 42-3. The last 8 times they have been a ranked team, they are 1-7 against the spread. They're one cover by 1.5, and most of the losses have been like this: 42-3, 30-3, 42-10. Last year, 42-24. Most of them have been blowout losses. So Cal does not do well when a ranked team. They're ranked right now. They're 3-0, ranked. They got outgained by North Texas last week, but won 23-17. So they're going on the road. They're playing in the heat and humidity of Ole Miss. The game starts at noon, so that's 9 o'clock a.m. Pacific time for them. That's a pretty early start for these boys from California in the heat and humidity. And if you're looking at Ole Miss, you might say, well, they struggled last week. against Southeast Louisiana. That's true. They did. They only won the game by 11, and that was with a late score. But the previous week, they beat Arkansas 31-17. And that Arkansas game, they actually led 31-10. Arkansas got a touchdown with 1:21 left and gained 81 other yards on this final drive here, or the stats would have been even better. So this is an Ole Miss team that, by the way, has coordinators. Their defensive coordinator, Mike McIntyre, was at Colorado. He faced Cal 3 times. Their offense coordinator, Rich Rodriguez, was at Arizona. He faced Cal 3 times. Those two combined to go 5-1 against Cal in their 6 meetings against them when they were in the Pac-12. So they know the Cal personnel. They're at home, heat and humidity. Cal doesn't do well as a ranked team. I'm taking Ole Miss -2.5 over California as your rare ranking play. Let's go to misleading finals. And for your misleading finals, we're going to take a look at Tennessee against Florida this week. And Florida last week is definitely off a misleading final. Against Kentucky, go over here, click on this. They trailed this thing 21-10 in the fourth quarter. Then they lost their quarterback. Kyle Trask came in, did a good job. Trask led Florida back to a touchdown here. And then they got a touchdown here with just 4:11 left. Florida leads the game by 1. Kentucky drives down the field. They set up for the game-winning field goal and miss it with about a minute to go in the game. So Florida runs 2 plays. They're just trying to run out the clock. They're going to have to punt, right? Well, they run a wide receiver reverse. Hammond takes it, goes 76 yards for a touchdown with 33 seconds left in the game. They win the game by 8, a game they could easily have lost 24-22, trailed the majority of the game. They win by 8, and it looks like an easy win on the road, but it was not. That's misleading. What else is misleading? How bad Tennessee is. And I've done a bunch of radio shows this week, and the general atmosphere around the country is Tennessee's a horrible football team. Well, they're not. I mean, they lost to Georgia State, yes, but they actually had a yardage edge, 52 yards. They lost to BYU, a game they probably shouldn't have lost. BYU completed a late pass to force overtime, and it was a sort of a miracle that the BYU got the thing to overtime and beat them there. They outgained BYU by 79 yards. They, of course, outgained Chattanooga last week. So they're plus 88 yards per game. And Florida very well could be 1-2 right now. They got past Miami. They got past Kentucky. And speaking of misleading, let's take a look at last year's game. It was a blowout, right? Florida 47-21. Let's look at the stats. 387 yards, 14 first downs for Florida, 364 yards, 18 first downs for Tennessee. The key, plus 5 in turnovers. Tennessee just turned the ball over all game long in this game. Florida, let's see if they had defensive touchdowns. They got a 65-yard pass. Most of these scores, look at this, 21-yard drive, 7-yard drive, 19-yard drive, -2-yard drive for scores in the second half, 19-yard drive. A lot of it set up by the plus 5 in turnovers. Tennessee actually had an 18-14 first down edge. So last year's game was misleading. Last week's game for Florida was misleading. And Tennessee's not as bad as everybody thinks they are. That's misleading. So you got 3 misleading factors all working together. I'm going to take Tennessee plus the 14.5 over Florida. And an interesting thing, Kyle Trask, the quarterback for Florida, wasn't even a starter in high school. Last game he started was as on the JV team as a freshman in high school. This will be his first start in high school or college. That's an interesting factor as well. So I like Tennessee plus the 14.5 in that one. All right, let's go to your scorebook game of the week. And last week's scorebook game of the week, we had Pittsburgh against Seattle, and Pittsburgh's winning the game. Then Ben Roethlisberger gets injured, and he's out, and they end up losing the game to Seattle. It was just one of those things that happened. But we're going right back with the Seattle Seahawks this week, because I pointed out last week that Seattle is very poor in their first road game and very poor the first 2 weeks of the season. They're not a great team. In fact, a very poor spread record the first 2 weeks of the season. But after that, and we'll pull up the scorebook page from last week again on Seattle. If you look at Seattle and see how they do in the third game, here at home, they beat Dallas last year. They were 0-2. They beat Dallas 24-13. Here they played Indianapolis, beat them 46-18. Remember, they've got the 12th man. They've got one of the loudest home stadiums out there. They beat Frisco at home 37-18. They beat the Bears at home 26-0. Once again, slow start 0-2, 26-0 they bury them. They beat Denver 26-20. Here they beat Jacksonville 45-17. They were an underdog to Green Bay. They upset them here. They were an underdog to Arizona. They upset them here. They were an underdog to San Diego. They upset them here. So Seattle is now in its wheelhouse. This is where they do well. They're at home. They've got the 12th man. And frankly, they played a little bit better than I thought they would last week. When you look at Seattle, after playing very disappointing against Cincinnati in the opener, they had a 425-261 yard edge. Now, you might say, hey, Pittsburgh lost Ben Roethlisberger, all right, which I will say that. And you might look at the Saints and say, well, the Saints got outgained by the Rams 380-244. They got outscored 27-9. But, hey, they lost Drew Brees at quarterback. Both very understandable. Well, guess what? I'm looking at the lines this week, and I know Drew Brees is out. And we see what happens when Drew Brees is out. We see what happens when Seattle takes on a backup quarterback. They pull the upset like they did last week. The line's only 4. Seattle is a 4-point home favorite. All those big blowout wins the third week of the season, and some of those came against like Aaron Rodgers and very good teams. Seattle plays well in this spot. Saints are starting a backup quarterback on the road. I believe only once under Sean Payton have they had a backup quarterback or started a meaningful game that wasn't Drew Brees. So I got to take Seattle against New Orleans with a backup quarterback, only laying 4 at home. We worked the scorebook in there, and I will say this. You can save some money on the scorebook right now. Let me go ahead and get that one up for you. And here's your code. The code to save money on the scorebook is SAVE5PS. Take $5 off the Phil Steele 2019 College and Pro Workbook. Normally $40. You get it for just $35.70. Type in this code when you go there to the store. And what you get is 300 and some odd pages. You get 2 full pages on every team. We didn't put out an NFL magazine, but this gets you an NFL magazine. It gets you all those angles. Let's take another look at the Seattle page again to see what you get. You get all these spread records right here in the NFL. Against the spread, you get these records for the NFL dating back to 1999, your annual leaders and such. And I believe I have a college page up here as well, just so you can see what you get. Let's take a look at the Nebraska page. Yeah, so we're going to take a look here. And with Nebraska, you get all these angles on all these games. Look at this. All the way back. This is straight up against the spread, favorite, underdog, conference games. Not only conference, home favorite, home dog, away dog, conference favorite, conference dog, ranked teams, top 10 teams. All that's at your fingertips for every team. And so the scorebook SAVE5PS will get you there with that code. Now let's move on to my FCS game of the week. And I want to talk to you about some FCS because we got some good stuff going on here in the FCS. North Dakota State's a dominant team. And right now, as you know, we've incorporated these average game grades. Of course, North Dakota State was number 1 last year. I was a little surprised to see that right now they're number 3 in the average game grades. Now, they'll probably be number 1 at the end of the year. They'll probably have an impressive win over number 4, UC Davis, this week, and they'll probably move up. So that got me thinking, well, who's the 2 teams above them? One of them is James Madison. Now, when I talked to their East Carolina's head coach this year, he said James Madison's going to have a hell of a defense. They do. Look at this, 13-9 and 12 first downs on the year. They're giving up 64 yards rushing, 2.2 yards per carry. They've played to a pretty good average game grade. They are number 2 in the country in that. They almost upset West Virginia, outgained them on the road, out first downed them 18-13. We saw what West Virginia did against NC State. So watch out for this James Madison team. They could be the best team. But currently right now, and a team that surprised me, the number 1 team right now is Sacramento State. And, they beat Southern Oregon. But look, the average game grade only gave them a 68.6 because Southern Oregon's a Division III team. But they gave Arizona State a great game. They only lost by 12 in that one. And then last week they beat Northern Colorado 50-0. And while Northern Colorado is 0-3, I'll point this out on the Northern Colorado page when you go look at it. Northern Colorado, there they are right there. Click on that. Northern Colorado has lost to San Jose State, but only lost by 17. And they were only outgained by 95 yards. They lost to Washington State, but were only only lost by 42. And were only outgained by 239. Sacramento State beat them by 50 and outgained them by 443 yards. So they actually had their worst game of the year against Sacramento State. Now, Sacramento State plays Fresno this week. My computer does say Fresno wins comfortably, but keep your eyes on this Sacramento State team. It could be surprising. Now, none of those had to do with my FCS play of the week. In my FCS play of the week, we're going to go to an FBS versus FCS game. We're going to take a look at Florida Atlantic. And Florida Atlantic this week is playing Wagner. Now, here's what I like about this matchup. Let's go back to 2017 with Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic in 2017 got off to a slow start under Lane Kiffin. They lost to Navy by 23. They lost to Wisconsin by 17. They got upset by Buffalo, for crying out loud. I even used Florida Atlantic on ESPN that week, and they lost to Buffalo. So they're going nowhere. They're an extremely disappointing team, right? Well, Lane Kiffin puts the hammer down the rest of the season, mostly blowouts. In fact, naturally come up here and you could take a look at the last 40 years results. Let's go back to 17 and see how they did against the spread. I love these W's and L's. It really makes it quick to look at. Win, 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 win. They did not cover against Marshall. They won by 5, laying 7.5. Win, win. Charlotte, they didn't cover. They only won by 19, laying 23.5. Look at how they finished off. 52-24, 41-17. Remember the bowl game against Akron where he rolled it up 50-3? They had their first stringers in the fourth quarter in that, rolling it up in a bowl game against Akron. That was something. So Lane Kiffin likes to roll it up. I like that. That's good. And let's take a look why Florida Atlantic's 1-2 so far this year. They lost to Ohio State 45-21. Now, at the time, you're thinking, no, it's not that great. That was the best game anybody's played against Ohio State this year. Even Cincinnati got blown out 42-0. Then they lost to Central Florida 48-14. Once again, Central Florida, he blew out Stanford last week. They beat Ball State on the road last week. They're gaining their confidence. Chris Robeson at quarterback was questionable to even play this year. He is there. He's getting better by the week. He threw for 366 yards last week. He's got a 5-1 ratio. He's got some good receivers, and Bryant, Harrison, and Mitchell. And McCarman's coming on. Let's see what McCarman rushed for last week. See if he had a better game. 99 yards last week, so I like that. After playing Ohio State and UCF's defense against weaker competition, 99. And Ball State's not a bad team. They could flirt with potentially getting to the 5 or 6 win marker this year. Now let's go take a look at Wagner. Wagner is 0-3 this year. Lost to Connecticut, East Stroudsburg, and Stony Brook. Now, they're not embarrassing themselves, but the one thing I want to point out, they did lose their quarterback, T.J. Linta, this year, but most importantly, they lost their running back, Ryan Fulsey. Fulsey rushed for 1,782 yards last year, 5.6 yards per carry. Have they been able to replace him? Not really. They're averaging 74 yards per game, 3.5 yards per carry. I believe East Stroudsburg is a Division III team as well. Team that they lost to. So Connecticut, East Stroudsburg, and Stony Brook they've lost to. They're struggling to run the football. They're giving up 211 yards per game on the ground. In fact, they're giving up 412 yards per game against weaker foes. They're playing to an average game grade of 40.0. Florida Atlantic's average game grade is 85.3. That says Florida Atlantic's 45 points better, plus the home edge is 48. The line's only 35. My computer says Florida Atlantic wins this 52-6 with a 641 to 162 yard edge. So add it all up, the FCS play is Florida Atlantic minus 35. Now, I will say this, with Phil Steele Plus, I go back to that Inside the Press Box when I mentioned it. Do you know when you sign up to Inside the Press Box, you get Phil Steele Plus for free? But if you just want Phil Steele Plus, here's a code word for you. We reduced the rate $5 this week. So Inside the Press Box for a college, FCS, NFL season pass for the whole year, $64. But if you type in the code winners, you can take $5 off and get it for $59, or get Inside the Press Box free, or get Phil Steele Plus free when you sign up to Inside the Press Box. If you just want the FCS, you want to become an expert on FCS, and like I said, these team pages are amazing. You've got stats from last year, you got individual game grade from last year, this year as well, color-coded green and red. I'm going to be picking FCS versus FCS games next week, which we did extremely well on last year. We'll have that up this year. But once again, your code word here is winners, and FCS only $24, but $19 with the code. So everybody says, do you put on FCS magazine? Hey, $19, you can have an active FCS magazine that takes you all the way through the end of the season. So make sure you type in the code word winners. That's at the Phil Steele store. Go to the homepage. You go to the Phil Steele store, and then you just click on Phil Steele Plus, type in that code word winners, or Phil Steele FCS, type in the code word winners, and you get Phil Steele Plus, all three, college, NFL. And by the way, let me go back and show you one thing on the NFL, which I forgot to show you. The NFL pages are loaded. And let's go back to that Seattle game for a minute, where they're playing New Orleans. These take you back all the way down, just like the regular pages do. They give you all these stats all the way down to 2010. But if you click on here, This gives you how the series has gone. Look at this. The home team in the Seattle-New Orleans game has won 4 in a row, and all have been fairly comfortable winners, all winners by more than the 4 points Seattle's laying this week. So when they travel to New Orleans, they've lost by 5 or more. When they hosted New Orleans, they've won by 5. They won by 27. And both those times, the New Orleans had Drew Brees at quarterback. So that's interesting to look. And one last thing, this is not an official selection, but I do want to show you how to use inside the Phil Steele Plus, and let's take a look at Arizona State this week. Something I wanted to point out: they're playing Colorado. They are off a big win. They are 3-0. They're confident. Colorado actually hasn't been playing all that well. I'll show you that in a minute. But look at this: when you click on the history down here, just click on the team. The home team is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1 against the spread. How this works over here is the win means if they won straight up. The color green means they covered the game. So the home team is 8-1 straight up in this series. And Colorado or Arizona State's done extremely well since 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-2 against straight up in the series, 7-3 against the spread in the series. And last year's game was pretty close. And when you look at Colorado, one thing I want to point out with Colorado is this. Colorado, here we go. Look at their games against Colorado State. They got a fumble return for a touchdown late to turn it into a 21-point game. That was actually a 7-point game in the fourth quarter. Nebraska had a 266, 84-yard edge at the half, led 17-0. Air Force had a 290, 132-yard edge at the half, led 20-10. I love these halftimes. And now Colorado's got to go on the road. This is their first true road game of the year, and Arizona State's a tough home team. So add it all up, Arizona State looks pretty good this week as well. I want to remind you, I want you to subscribe. Keep these things coming out free. Hit the bell so you're notified when they come in. Like the video, and let me know what you want to see on Wednesday. Check out that Wednesday one. I got a lot of interesting things on Wednesday's YouTube video, but let me know what you want to see. Go ahead and type it down below. I do read them, and I'll put it on there. So there you go. 8 plays for this week. The Inside the Press Box yardage game of the week is Tulsa. The streak of the week is Nebraska. Situational play number 1 is Miami minus 29.5 over Central. Situational play number 2 is Old Dominion plus 30 over Virginia. The rare ranking play is Mississippi minus 2.5 over Cal. Misleading final, Tennessee plus 14.5 over Florida. Your workbook page is Seattle minus 4 over New Orleans. And the FCS play, Florida Atlantic minus 35 over Wagner. Back with you next week, and thanks for watching thanks for taking the Phil Steele Plus tour. Hey everyone, this is Phil Steele. If you're a hardcore football fan, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and of course, hit the bell. And comment below your favorite football moment of the week, and let us know what you'd like to see here on my YouTube channel.